Book 22. Book 22, gentlemen. I've been waiting this whole time for this revenge. And it's tough for me not to read the whole thing out loud to you because it's amazing. Just remember, there are 117 suitors, okay? 117 versus 4. Odysseus, Philodius, Eumaeus, and of course Odysseus' son Telemachus. Now, after he shoots the arrow through the axe heads, Odysseus is revealed. His first arrow that he uses to kill someone is the leader of these jerks, the suitors Antinous. And he's not even paying attention. He's taking a drink of wine from a bowl. They didn't have cups. They drank wine from bowls. And so he's got this thing up to his lips, ready to take a drink, and Odysseus fires an arrow whoop, through his throat. Oh my gosh, he dies and bites the dust. A lot of these images are pretty graphic. It's beautiful, okay? So lines 8 through 23. As he spoke, he took aim at Antinous, who at that moment was lifting to his lips a golden cup, a fine two-eared golden goblet, and was just about to sip the wine. Bloodshed was the farthest thing from his mind. They were at a banquet. Who would think that one man, however strong, would take them all on and so ensure his own death? Odysseus took dead aim at Antinous' throat and shot, and the arrow punched all the way through the soft neck tissue. Antinous fell to one side, the cup dropped from his hands, and a jet of dark blood spurted from his nostrils. He kicked the table as he went down, spilling the food on the floor, and the bread and the roast meat were fouled in the dust. Oh my gosh, crazy. The suitors realize all of their weapons are missing, that they're in trouble, because Telemachus had locked them up. They're upset. They start yelling, like, "What the heck do you think you're doing?" Lines 34 through 37. They say, they all assumed that he had not shot to kill and had no idea how tightly the net had been drawn around them. Odysseus scowled at the whole lot of them and said, "You dogs! You thought I would never come home from Troy. So you wasted my house, forcing the women to sleep with you. And while I was still alive, you courted my wife without any fear of the gods in high heaven, or of any retribution from the world of men. Now the net has been drawn tight around you." Okay? So he is pumped. Okay, he responds to their complaints. Eurymachus tries to defend how they acted, courting Penelope. He blames it all on Antinous. What a punk. No honor for this guy, Eurymachus. Remember, these are the two head suitors, the leaders. So Eurymachus says, line 48, "If you really are Odysseus of Ithaca, then what you say is just. The citizens have done many foolish things in this house and many in the fields. But the man to blame lies here dead. It was all Antinous. He started it all. Not so much because he wanted a marriage or needed one, but for another purpose, which Zeus did not fulfill. He wanted to be king in Ithaca and to kill your son in ambush. Now he's been killed and he deserved it. But spare your people." Remember, these are his people that are trying to court his wife. These are the princes of the nearby islands and towns of his island, okay, of Ithaca. "But spare your people. We will pay you back for all we have eaten and drunk in your house. We will make a collection, right, guys? We'll take up a collection. We'll pass a can around and put money in it. Each man will put in the worth of 20 oxen. We will make restitution in bronze and gold until your heart is soothed, until no one could blame you for being angry." This is not going to work, buddy. Okay? He will not listen to their excuses, and he is ready for blood. He says, line 65, "Eurymachus, not even if all of you gave me your entire family fortunes and all that you have and ever will have, would I stay my hands from killing. You courted my wife, and you will pay in full. Your only choice now is to fight like men or run for it. Who knows, one or two of you might live to see another day. But I doubt it." Their blood turned milky when they heard this, and Eurymachus now turned. Eurymachus realizes, whoops, we're dead in the water. We got to fight. So he has a plan. He says, "Look, we still have swords on us. We'll turn the tables over. We'll use them for shields. And hey, let's all charge Odysseus and Telemachus at once. Now, of course, in really bad movies, when you have a warrior fighting against a group, each guy in the group always attacks individually, right? They don't all jump him at once. And the guy is able to fight off the whole crowd and win. Okay, this was first thought of in the ancient times with Homer. Okay, they're going to try and fight all individually instead of charging all at once. Eurymachus also says, "Hey, one of us can escape and we'll go and get reinforcements from the town." But Eurymachus is the next to die. Lines 82 through 92. With that, Eurymachus drew his honed bronze swords and charged Odysseus with an ear-splitting cry. Rah! Odysseus in the same instant let loose an arrow that entered his chest just beside the nipple and spiked down to his liver. The sword fell from Eurymachus' hand. He spun round and fell on the table, knocking off dishes and cups, and rolled to the ground, his forehead banging up and down against it, and his feet kicking a chair in his death throes, until the world went dark. Whew. So there are the two leaders of the suitors. They are gone. They are dead. Next up is Amphinomus. Remember, Odysseus tried to warn this guy to get out, but he doesn't, and Telemachus kills him. Lines 96 to 105. Telemachus got the jump on him, Amphinomus, though, driving a bronze-tipped spear into his back, square between his shoulder blades and through to his chest. He fell with a thud, his forehead hammering into the ground. Telemachus sprang back, leaving the spear right where it was, stuck in Amphinomus, fearing that if he tried to pull it out, someone would rush him and cut him down as he bent over the corpse. So he ran over to his father's side, and the words flew fast. Now, Telemachus is going to go, okay, and he's going to go to the storeroom and retrieve more weapons. Philodeus and Eumaeus also will arm themselves. Now, as they're in the storeroom, Odysseus kills a bunch of suitors until his arrows run out. Now he has spears. He posts Eumaeus at a back door, which is at the end of a narrow hallway, where they can only attack one at a time. So one man can defend against a whole group because it's such a narrow passageway, you can only attack one at a time. Now, Melanthius, he's the evil goat herder. He has a plan to help the suitors because he's evil, just like the evil Melantho, the maidservant Melantho. He will sneak to the storeroom and arm the suitors, which he does, lines 140 to 151. He says, "That won't work, Agelaus. The door outside is too near the courtyard." In other words, they can't take the back door. "An easy shot from where he is standing. And the passageway is dangerously narrow. One good man could hold it against all of us. Look, let me bring you weapons and armor from the storeroom. That has to be where Odysseus and his son have laid them away." So saying, Melanthius clambered up to Odysseus' storeroom. There he picked out 12 shields and as many spears and helmets and brought them out quickly to give to the suitors. Odysseus' heart sank. I mean, he thinks he still doesn't fully believe, oddly enough, that he's going to win. That's crazy. He's got Athena on his side. So now the suitors are armed as well. So Telemachus is a man, but he is also still, he makes childish mistakes because he realizes he forgot to lock the storeroom that Melanthius got in. Oops. Okay, lines 159 to 164. He admits it, though, which is a manly thing, to admit your faults. He says, "No, it's my fault, Father, and no one else's. I must have left the storeroom door open, and one of them spotted it." And he tells Eumaeus to go close the door so that, see whether the women is behind this or whether it was Melanthius, son of Dolius. Okay, this was, of course it was Melanthius, that evil goat herder. But to take responsibility for your actions and admit your mistakes is a very manly thing to do. Guys, at this point, we have the next words of the Easter egg. And the next words are, the fifth and sixth words, called the. Called the. Now, Eumaeus is sent to lock the door and see who was helping the suitors. Odysseus has a special punishment when they realize that it's actually Melanthius. And he says, save him for later, to tie him up. Lines 170 to 181. He says, there he goes, my lord Odysseus, the sneak, just as we thought, on his way to the storeroom. Tell me what to do. Kill him if I prove to be the better man, or bring him to you so he can pay in full for all the wrongs he has done here in your house. Odysseus says, Telemachus and I will keep the suitors busy in the hall here. Don't worry about that, Eumaeus. Just tie him up. Bend his arms and legs behind him and lash them to a board strapped onto his back. Then hoist him up to the rafters in the storeroom and leave him there to twist in the wind. Guys, I want you to imagine your hands tied behind your back, your ankles tied behind you, then a board put between those ropes that are holding you, and then being hoisted up by that board so that your shoulders are pulled backwards and your ankles and your wrists are the only things holding you up backwards from this board, just hanging from the ceiling. Oh, very painful for Melanthius. But he deserves it because he's an evil goat herder, and he made fun of Odysseus, right? So, where are we here? Special punishment for Melanthius. So that's what they do. They go to lines 193 to 214. Eumaeus and the coward Philodius jumped Melanthius and dragged him by the hair back into the storeroom. They threw him hard to the ground, knocking the wind out of him, and tied his hands and feet behind his back, making it hurt, as Odysseus had ordered. Then they attached a rope to his body and hoisted him up along the tall pillar until he was up by the rafters. And you, swineherd Eumaeus, you mocked him. Oh, now you'll really be on watch, Melanthius, the whole night through, lying on a feather bed, just your style. Of course, it's not a feather bed. It's a very uncomfortable thing to be lying up there. And you're sure to see the early dawn come up from ocean streams couched in gold. So they left Melanthius there, racked with pain. Eumaeus and Philodius go back. They lock the door. They go back to help Odysseus. Now, there's only 4 men against all the suitors, but then Athena appears in the form of Mentor. Odysseus knows it is her. The suitors don't, and they insult her. Bad mistake, suitors. Lines 223 to 236. They say, you there, Mentor, don't let Odysseus talk you into helping him and fighting us. This is the way I see it turning out. When we have killed these men, father and son, we'll kill you next for what you mean to do in this hall. You'll pay with your life. And when we've taken care of all 5 of you, we'll take everything you have, Mentor, everything in your house and in your fields, and add it to Odysseus' property. We won't let your sons stay in your house or let your daughters or even your wife go about freely in the town of Ithaca. So they're going to enslave Mentor's sons, daughters, and his wife. Athena's upset. She says, I can't believe, Odysseus, that you of all people have lost those guts you had when you fought the Trojans for 9 long years to get Helen back, killing so many in combat and coming up with the plan that took wide Troy. How is it that now, when you've come home, you get all teary-eyed about showing your strength to this pack of suitors? Get over here next to me and see what I can do. I'll show you what sort of man Mentor, son of Alcimus, is, and how he repays favors in the heart of battle. Now, Athena puts newfound strength into Odysseus and the 4 men defending him, and she says, you better get out there and kick their butts. Okay? Now, at this point, one of the suitors that are still alive, Agelaus, has a plan. They're going to throw spears 6 at a time, not all at once, just 6 at a time, and pray that the gods grant them glory. Athena makes them all miss. Odysseus and his crew fire next, and they hit a bunch of people, lines 277 to 287. They say, it's our turn now. I say we throw our spears right into that crowd, Odysseus says. These bastards mean to kill us on top of everything else they've done to wrong me. He spoke, and they all threw their sharp spears with deadly aim. Odysseus hit Deiptolemus. Telemachus got Euryades, the swineherd Elatus, and the cattle herder took out Pisander. They all bit the dirt at the same moment, and the suitors retreated to the back of the hall, allowing Odysseus and his men to run out and pull their spears from the dead men's bodies. So they get their spears back as well. Now, the suitors have a second volley of spears, And this time, Athena allows them to actually have a couple hits. Telemachus gets grazed on the wrist, so he's bleeding a little bit from his wrist, and Eumaeus gets clipped on the shoulder, so he's bleeding a little bit from his shoulder. It's not like it went through his wrist or through his shoulder. No, it just grazed him. So they're bleeding, but of course Odysseus remains untouched. At this point, Odysseus and his crew fire back, and they, of course, have a bunch of hits, lines 297 to 315. Then Odysseus and his men got off another round into the throng. Odysseus, sacker of cities. Man, what a great nickname. Hitting Eurydamus. Telemachus getting Amphimedon. The swineherd Polybus. And lastly, the cattle herder striking Ctesippus square in the chest. And he crowed over him. Always picking a fight, Ctesippus, just like your father. Well, you can stop all your big talk now. We'll let the gods have the last word this time. Take this spear as your host's gift. Fair exchange for the hoof you threw at god like Odysseus when he made his rounds begging in the hall. Remember, Ctesippus hit Odysseus with that big ox hoof. Not very cool, but now he is dead. At this point, after a lot of these suitors are dead, Athena sends a panic or a fear, which totally unnerves the remaining suitors. They're done. They don't have any fight left. Lines 315 to line 331. Only then did Athena hold up her overpowering aegis from her high perch, and the minds of the suitors shriveled with fear, and they fled through the hall like a herd of cattle that an iridescent gadfly goads along on a warm spring afternoon, with Odysseus and his men after them like vultures with crooked talons and hooked beaks, descending from the mountains upon a flock of smaller birds who fly low under the clouds and over the plain. The vultures swoop down to pick them off. The smaller birds cannot escape. The men men thrill to see the chase in the sky. Odysseus and his cohorts were clubbing the suitors right and left all through the hall. Horrible groans rose from their lips as their heads were smashed in, and the floor of the great hall smoked with blood. Remember, the floor of this hall is made of dirt, and that's cool to the touch, especially inside. But now that there's 98 degrees hot blood in there, it meets the cold ground and it starts to steam. It's a very vivid image. At this point, Leodes begs for his life at Odysseus' knees. Remember, he always said the suitors shouldn't be doing this. He's a soothsayer, so he can see the future, supposedly. And he grabs Odysseus' knees, remember the rules of supplication, and he begs for his life. And Odysseus has a choice. He can spare him or kill him. Odysseus kills him. Lines 334 to 352. He says, Leodes begs, I swear I have never said or done anything wrong to any woman in your house. I tried to stop the suitors when they did such things, but they wouldn't listen. They wouldn't keep their hands clean, and now they've paid a cruel price for their sins. And I, their soothsayer, who have done no wrong, will be laid low with them. That's the gratitude I get. Odysseus scowled. He says, if you really are their soothsayer, as you boast you are, how many times must you have prayed in the halls that my sweet homecoming would never come, and that you would be the one my wife would go off with and bear children to? You're a dead man. As he spoke, his strong hand reached for a sword that lay nearby, a sword Agelaus had dropped when he was killed. The soothsayer was struck full in the neck. His lips were still forming words when his lopped head rolled in the dust. Holy underwear. He decapitates this guy. Now, the next guy up for supplication is Phemius. Now, this guy is just a singer and a bard. He's not a fighter. He's not after Penelope. So he begs for his life, and Odysseus spares him because Telemachus speaks up and says, hey, Dad, Phemius he's all good. He didn't do anything wrong. And Telemachus says, we should also spare Medon, who is the herald or messenger, the delivery guy. And this poor guy is hiding under a table, and he steps up and he's like, oh, thank gods, thanks for sparing me. And he runs up, and Odysseus says for these two, Phemius and Medon, to go out in the courtyard until this is all over. So Phemius and Medon go out to the courtyard and they pray to Zeus. At this point, Odysseus and everyone, they search for survivors, lines 405 to 414. Odysseus, too, had his eyes wide open, looking all through his house to see if anyone was still alive and hiding from death. But everyone he saw lay in the blood and dust, the whole lot of them, like fish that fishermen have drawn up in nets from the gray sea on to the curved shore. They lie all in heaps on the sand beach, longing for the salt waves, and the blazing sun drains their life away. So too the suitors, lying in heaps. Whew! So they've killed all of the suitors. Odysseus calls for Eurycleia. She will be in charge of leading a group of, the disloyal women to clean up the blood and the guts and the body parts and the bodies out of the great hall. They're going to have to scrape the mud floor. There's a layer of mud. It's blood mud. Blood mud. And they're going to have to scrape it so they can get that bloody mud out of the house so it doesn't stink up the whole house. So he calls to Eurycleia, and she comes down, and she rejoices to see her master in victory. Odysseus says to Eurycleia that she has to tell him which servants were faithful and which not. And she says, you have 50 servants, and 12 of them slept with the suitors and were unfaithful. And he has a special punishment for them. Okay? She says, yes, indeed, child. I will tell you all. There are 50 women in your house, servants we have taught to do their work, to card wool and bear all the drudgery. Of these 12 have shamed this house and respect neither me nor Penelope herself. Telemachus has only now become a man, and his mother has not allowed him to direct the women servants. And she says, Eurycleia says, hey, should I go get Penelope? I should wake her up. Remember, Penelope was put into a deep sleep by Athena right before this all happened. She's out cold. And Odysseus says, no, don't wake her first. Don't wake her yet. We have to clean the house first. I don't want her to come down to this disgusting mess. I mean, it's just piles of bodies everywhere. So the 12 disloyal servants carry the dead bodies out, 117 of them, and then they clean. Eumaeus and Philodius also help with this. These 12 are hanged until they die. Lines 485 to 497. After they clean everything up, they're hung up. Telemachus says, I won't allow a clean death for these women, the suitor sluts, who have heaped reproaches upon my own head and upon my mother's. He spoke and tied the cable of a dark prowed ship to a great pillar and pulled it about the roundhouse, stretching it tight so their feet couldn't touch the ground. So he has them all in nooses on this one string, and he pulls it so tight until they raise up from the ground. Long-winged thrushes or doves making their way to their roosts fall into a snare set into a thicket, and the bed that receives them is far from welcome. So too these women, their heads hanging in a row, the cable looped around each of their necks. It was a most piteous death. Their feet fluttered for a little while, but not for long. Whew, terrifying. Melanthius is also punished. Lines 498 to 502. Then they brought Melanthius outside, and in their fury they sliced off his nose and his ears with cold bronze, and they pulled his genitals out by the root. Oh! Raw meat for the dogs. They fed his Oompa Loompas to the dogs in front of him as he was bleeding there, and then they chopped off his hands and feet. This done, they washed their own hands and feet and went back into their master's great hall. Whew! That is chilling, what they did to Melanthius. Ew. Now Odysseus cleans up and meets all of his loyal servants. They all come out and they hug him. They're crying and they all weep. At this point, I will give you the last two words of your Easter egg. And the last two words are Matterhorn first. Matterhorn first. Great book, guys. Sorry it's such a long video, but it was worth it.